Hey everyone, so this is going to be the second part of, well, this second tutorial that I'm making. Last time we learned about data, and we learned about doing different things to that data, manipulating the data, changing the data, using the data. And today is going to be a quicker video because I just got off work, so I probably am only going to cover a few things. Normally, the last video I made was longer, but that was because I did it on the weekend or the holiday. I don't remember which one, but I wasn't working that day. So I just got off work and I saw a comment, which thank you very much for leaving a comment. Like I said in the last video, the comments really mean a lot because it lets me know that like somebody's actually using this and it's useful to them. So yeah, I'm going to do a quick video on the next thing that you would do with data, right? So this goes into, I don't want to teach people just object-oriented programming, and I don't want to teach people just functional programming, and I don't want to teach people just these different types of programming. I want to teach the underneath the covers of everything that's happening in all of those, right? The way you do something is the way you do something, but that's not actually programming in general, if that makes sense. As you get to learn more, you'll hopefully see what I mean by that. But in essence, touching on what we talked about in the first video is that when you are programming, people say like you're giving instructions to computers, you're doing all that. Just think about it as you are creating data and you are doing things to that data. That's all that matters, right? And when you start doing that, you'll start realizing, at least that's when it opened my eyes a lot to what's going on underneath all of these different programming languages and why a lot of them are the same. They just do things a little differently. So this is what we had last time, as you can see. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. I'm just going to paste it underneath because I kind of want to keep it just in case we need it. And I'm going to comment it out. And then I am going to just write a pass here so that way that can go away. I'm going to do the same thing over here. All right, I'm going to comment this out here. And I am going to, I just want a fresh start when we're doing this, so there's too much that shows in the background if I do it differently. So, right, this is what we did last time, and I know the video last time, I want to apologize for that. The last video, after I recorded the entire thing, I looked and I was like, wow, apparently the settings that I use for streaming do not correlate to the settings I was using for recording, so the text was like really hard to read. I fixed it in this video, so you shouldn't have any problems with that. If you do, let me know, but I looked this time and I checked it to make sure. Double checked it actually to make sure that it's working properly. So I highly recommend that you watch the first video, strictly just because it outlines the data portion of what we were doing, variables and things like that. It's imperative that you get that because this is going to build on that, right? So let's go ahead and start in Python, and we're going to do something pretty simple, right? And you might see that some of this code I might repeat. But in essence, when you have this, right, we're going to go back to name equals Sam, age equals 32, right? When I have these two pieces of data, right, I have a name and I have an age. I have a string and I have an int or an integer or a number, however you want to call it for right now. It's going to be hard as the program grows larger and larger to get these things to move around the program without like passing them separately, right? Like it's like, would I rather have like 15 keys, right, or one master key, right? Like if I have to carry on 15 keys, it's cumbersome. There's a lot of things that go on. It's like, do I want to pass around two variables or would I rather pass around one variable, right? So is there a way that I could make this easier on me, right? And that goes into what classes are and what structures are. They are not the same thing, but they can be used the same way, if that makes sense. And if you're serious about learning the ins and outs of programming and computers in general, you'll see that knowing these foundational things is going to be a lot easier to then build up your knowledge on other things that rest on top of them, right? So the most useful thing for classes and for structures is that it allows you to make a collection of data, or to make a structure of data, or a container of data. Think of it as holding data, right? Think of it as that master key for a bunch of other things, right? So the equivalent in Python, right, for this container, right, is a class. And because we're using name and age here, right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a person class, because those are things that a person has, right? So def, this is some boilerplate that needs to happen. And we talked about boilerplate in the last video, so if you don't know what that is, please watch the last video. But essentially, right, quick and easy, boilerplate is code that you have to write because you have to write it, and it has to be done. So this class person, right, is class is a keyword, person is what we're calling the class. We're defining a new initialization function for it, and then from in there, what you're going to do is we are going to create, right, self.name, and we're going to set self.name. So this person's name, when you reference self, it means you're referencing the class that you're actually building, right? That instance of that class, right? So if I have two persons, self.name will be the name that I assign to each one of those people. So self.name is going to be the name we pass in, and self.age is going to be the age we pass in. And just to make this easier to read for you guys, I'm going to say wanted name and wanted age. Wanted name, wanted age. This is just to help with readability if you're new to programming, to see which one's which, right? Like name is not this, the name that I was passing in before isn't this self.name. It's being assigned to that self.name, but it's not the same. So wanted name, wanted age. So I'm taking the person's name and I'm giving it the wanted name, and I am giving the person's age the wanted age. And the way that you would do that, right, is we would come down here and we would say, now you can call the class, you can call the instance of a class whatever you want, but I'm going to call it Sam because Sam is a person, so it makes more sense, at least to me. Sam, my wanted name, right? Like I keep pointing to the screen, and I know you guys can't see the screen. Wanted name and wanted age is what a class takes, right? And this is how you read documentation as well. Like you'll see a lot of times in documentation, things that like might not mean a lot when you just read them the first time. Like if you've just looked through documentations, you might not get a lot out of it the first time, but when you start realizing that there's a special syntax, there's a special way to read documentation, it can help you tremendously in learning a language. So right, it's telling me that it needs a wanted name and it needs a wanted age, right? So here I am going to go ahead and do Sam for that, and when I do comma, now it wants a wanted age. I'm going to do 32, right? Now I am setting these values directly on this person, right? But nothing is stopping me from passing in this name here and this age to this person, right? I already have them. I could essentially do this as well, right? And that, I think this better shows that person is really just a collection of those, right? It's a collection of that data. And that's, if you get anything out of this video, it's that a class and a structure, when we do it in Go in a second, is really just a container for that data and what you want to do with it. So we now have a person who we're calling Sam. That's the variable that we gave it. And that person is going to have a name and it is going to have an age, right? So in our last video, we had this say hello, right, down here. I'm going to go ahead and copy or uncopy that. Right, so we have this function back, right? So this function, right, and I think what I called it in the last video was using the data that we have, right? So now, how are we going to use the data that we have, right? So we're gonna do say hello, and we are going to do, see, it's saying what is this name, same name. So I'm going to do Sam, but this time I'm going to go inside that Sam container that has my data, and I'm going to pull out the name that I was assigned, right? So I'm going inside that container, I'm pulling that piece of data out, and I'm saying that's what I want to use when I bring this function, when I call this say hello function, right? So now when I run this, you should see that oh, sorry, let me put this up here because it is complaining. Now I should be able to do it, yeah. Because of the way the interpreter for Python runs, it has to know that that function exists, right? So I just put it up on top. So, right, what we did is we used that sam.name, and we took a function and we called it with this sam.name that I had just created. And just to, I had it the other way to show that it was a container for these two things, but we're gonna go ahead and get rid of it just so that you guys aren't confused at all. And we're gonna say Sam 32, right? And name to use. I know I'm changing some stuff. This is strictly just so that if you're reading this code, you hopefully won't have any questions on what it is doing. It's very verbose code, as they say. So def say hello, name to use. So I am now printing hello, name to use. How is your day? So that is the simple way of using a container or using a class strictly as a container. Classes and structures in Go offer you some other things, but that's going to be in another video because I don't have a lot of time today to go into that. And I misspelled my own name apparently. That's supposed to be Sam. Okay, so yeah. So now we're going to look at how we would do this in Go as of right now. So we're going to go ahead and we have this import format, which we are going to use, so I'll keep it there, even though if I save it's going to go away. And we're going to create, right, we're going to create a type. We're going to say type, and we're going to call this a person, and we're going to say it is a struct, short for structure, and our name is going to be a string, and our age is going to be an int, or an integer, a number, right? And essentially, as you can see, we talked about this last time, that like, yes, this is a requirement. This function main is a requirement for a Go program if you're running it off of there. But you can see that Python actually, when you want to write like really well-structured programs or things like that, it actually uses a little bit more boilerplate than what Go does, right? Like this here is extra boilerplate that occurs with the class person, right? This is stuff that I have to write. I need to write an initialization function for it to work properly. I believe actually you could actually, in Python, I think you can actually create that class without an initialization function and use just functions that you declare inside of it, but that's another video as well. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing here, and we're going to say Sam equals, and the way that you do this in Go is you use braces, right? And this can get a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for, a little getting used to if you're coming from Python or if you're coming from another language that uses classes, right? Because these parentheses is normally what you use when you start initializing an object. Like even in like Java and other, you do like you initialize the object with parentheses. But in Go, because it's not an object, it's a collection of these fields. You essentially are, sorry, just a second, let me type this. You essentially are, you're just putting those fields together, and that's why I wanted to, like, in this video, I wanted to show that in the most basic form, a class, a structure, is really just a container to hold things. And it just makes it easier to manage that data that you created throughout your program. So now we can go ahead and we created Sam, right? We created is equal to a person. We assigned a name and we assigned an age. And this right here is roughly as close as you're going to get in Python and in Go to the same thing, right? And just so you know that, let's go ahead and do a foomat print line Sam. Apparently I like to write SAN for my name. So we're going to go ahead and go run main.go. You can see down here that we have Sam32, right? That's just showing you that these, like, you can really see that. Think of these braces, right, that you're seeing as the container for those two fields, right? It's pushing those together, it's keeping them together, so that way it's easier to move along your program with that one master key than instead of holding 2 keys or 5 keys, because you can put as many fields as you want in these. We need to go ahead and define our say hello function. I know I wrote it down there. Yeah. Let's go ahead and just copy and paste it. I was going to write it, but like I said, I have to. Actually, I am a soccer coach this year, apparently, since my kids wanted to play soccer, so I have to go to that soon. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. I'm going to go ahead and change same name to... if you do Control F2, if you're using Visual oh, I don't want to do it everywhere, never mind. I'll do it by there. You can pretty much change every instance of this same name at the same time, but I'm not going to do that because it'll change my commented out code that I wanted to keep down here, because I will probably release this on GitHub, or just at least put a post of it on GitHub, so that way you guys will be able to use it. And then now what we can do is we can say hello and sam.name, right? So as you can see, this is, like I had said before, roughly as close as you're gonna get. It's automatically going to put spaces in there, but this is essentially the exact same code in both languages, right? We have say hello, we have say hello, string's the same, we're using that format string. The way that we create that collection, and I keep saying it like that, but it's just so that you guys start thinking this way. That the way we create that collection of fields, or that structure of fields, or that class that contains those fields, in Go, we do it with braces. We say person, the name of the type that we created, and then we assign the fields. And in Python, we do it this way: Sam equals person, parentheses, Sam32. We say hello, saying that it's taking in a name to use, and it's a string, and say hello, name to use, right? So essentially, that's what I wanted to cover today. Like I said, since someone actually wrote back and commented on the video and said that they were actually interested in this, it made me want to continue these videos, which, like I had said, if you don't subscribe, if you don't do that, fine, whatever, I don't really care. I do care mostly if you leave a comment and just say, hey, this is helping me out, I learned something, stuff like that. That's what I actually really care about. So I hope you guys liked that part. The next video I'm going to go ahead and we're going to look into these classes and these structures a little bit more. and we're going to show how we can not only link fields to these containers now, but we can actually link functions to them, functionality. We can make these things do things by pretty much attaching a function to the containers themselves. So in Python, that's called like a method, right? A method is done on this class that we create. It's a function that's attached to a class that modifies its properties that we set, its fields that we set. And in Go, you do the same, but you do that with a function that takes in a type, right? A typed function almost. I think that's what it would be called in Python or in Go. I actually need to look at that. It would be based off of, yeah, essentially you have a function and you say, hey, this type is going to have this function, and then you'll be able to, when you use that person, when I create that person structure like we have here, I can then call a function that's attached to it almost. So we'll go over that the next video, and you'll see that it's a very powerful mechanism for taking that data that you had and running certain operations on it, whether that's you're using the data, whether you're manipulating the data, or you're changing the data. So I hope you liked the video. Like I said, if you do like it, please leave a comment. If you want to like and subscribe to the video, sweet, cool. I do prefer the comments though. But yeah, thanks for watching, and let me know if everything's working out well.